Today is technically the final day of a four-day truce between Israel and Hamas, and we're waiting for word on the expected release of another Israeli group of hostages and Palestinian prisoners. But now talks are underway to extend the truce to allow more people to be freed. This is a live look right now at the Rafah border crossing, where aid continues to enter Gaza during the pause in fighting. The truce will soon expire, but Egyptian, Qatari, and American negotiators are reportedly closing in on a possible extension. Both Israel and Hamas have discussed that possibility. CTV's Scott Hurst joins me now with the very latest. Scott, this is the final day of the four-day truce. What more are we learning about potential releases today?
Marcia, this has always been an incredibly fragile four-day pause in fighting that was allowing for an exchange of hostages and prisoners, and also, as you mentioned, aid to get through that Rafah border crossing. And yesterday, 17 hostages were freed in exchange for 39 Palestinian prisoners. And according to Egyptian sources, more than 120 trucks were able to get in through the Rafah border crossing. So as you mentioned, we are still awaiting word from both sides on the exchange of hostages and prisoners today, making it to this fourth day. But now there are lots of discussions about potentially extending it to a fifth and maybe even longer than that. As part of the original deal, of course, there was a caveat that said Israel would extend the pause in fighting for a day for every 10 additional hostages that were released. So that was part of the original deal. And now that we're here on Monday, the fourth and final day of this temporary pause in fighting, that's also given a bit of a reprieve to people in Gaza from the ongoing Israeli bombardment. We're waiting first to see if the prisoner and hostage exchange will go on today. And then after that, the question is, will this temporary ceasefire continue, as negotiators are still working around the clock to at least keep it going day by day, Marcia? And then after that, if there are any potential solutions for more of a long-term agreement.
Okay, so in terms of those actual negotiations, Scott, where do they stand right now, and who all is involved in determining whether or not the pause continues?
You mentioned some of the big players in this mediated pause that came into effect on Friday. These are the Americans. These are the Egyptians, the Qataris, working with Israel and Hamas. U.S. President Joe Biden on the weekend expressed his interest in extending this pause at least day by day to get more hostages out. This morning, the NATO Secretary General is also calling for an ongoing extension. However, on the weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did meet with troops in Gaza on day 3 of this truce, and he continued to reiterate some of his stance, saying the goal is to eliminate Hamas and get all the hostages free. And he says their military plan will continue after the deal is over. So there is mounting international pressure. There's also mounting internal pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to get more of the hostages released. But there is still talk that the bombardment will continue once this deal is over, even as negotiators continue to push for an extension in this deal, Marcia, and both sides appear to be interested in this extension. So we're waiting, of course, word on those final hostages and prisoners, and also if this four-day pause in fighting can continue at least temporarily day by day.
All right, Scott Hurst for us. Scott, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.